Blessed be the fruit. May the Lord open. Ugh. What's up, everybody, and welcome to episode 13 of Brian's Book Bastion. Today we're going to be looking at a dystopian novel, the perfect episode 13, and that's The Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood. Now, this video is going to be a little bit different than the other videos on Brian's Book Bastion where I review a book after I've finished it, because The Handmaid's Tale is actually premiering as a television series on Hulu in just a little bit over a week now. And so that leaves plenty of time for all of you out there that have been curious about The Handmaid's Tale to pick this thing up and read it for yourself. I was absolutely floored by this thing, and so I would definitely recommend picking it up if you have been curious. And today, to convince you a little bit more, we're going to look at the 4 reasons you should read The Handmaid's Tale before watching the show. For those of you looking for a more in-depth discussion on The Handmaid's Tale, think of this video as a part 1. Part 2 will be after I've watched the show, and I'll kind of discuss the themes in a more specific sense, and this will be a little bit more broad. So let's get this thing started. Number 1. The flow, pacing, and world building of this thing is just amazing. Now, I know a lot of people when they watch shows will often give credit to the writers and the directors, and of course those are important. It's a totally different medium here, but oftentimes when they're working from such great source material, their job is so much easier. Essentially what I'm saying here is give Margaret Atwood her due. You start off the book in a flashback and kind of get just a few small details to know that something is off in this world, and then you move forward to the present where Offred, the main character, is moving into a new house, and she's exploring it as if she's had this process happen before. You keep getting all these little hints here and there, especially in the second chapter with the supremely eerie, they've removed everything you can hang yourself with, and you start to piece together the story little by little. Margaret Atwood does a great job of not giving you too much, but also giving you enough to stay motivated to continue to flesh out this world a little bit more, as horrific as it is. For example, you start to get a bunch of names that don't quite mean anything to you at the beginning, like the Guardians, or the Commanders, the Wives, the Marthas, and of course the Handmaids, but none of it is explicitly explained right away. In my case, I didn't really know too much about the book. I was excited about the show and had heard so many good things over the years about it that I decided to pick it up myself, but I knew kind of what the handmaid's job was supposed to be within the society, but you don't really get a 100% clear picture until way later in the first third of the book. The handmaid's job specifically is to get pregnant and have children for society because there are various reasons why fertility has gone down over time, but you don't actually get into a look into the ceremony or the process of how it happens until close to 100 pages, and it is very strange when you get there. But that's what's amazing about this book, is you are led there the whole time and you start to understand, okay, I know what their job is, but once you actually get a sight of what exactly goes on behind the scenes for each of these families, you become more and more horrified. Characters that are mentioned briefly at the beginning get fleshed out way later and become even a more important character as the book starts to hit its second half. And just overall, it was amazing how the arc of this story was just so perfectly crafted that I never felt like I was bored. I never felt like I was missing too much information. I just knew I was getting exactly what I needed for each chapter at the time. So I'll say this again just to make it clear. Give Margaret Atwood her due. Read this thing before you see the show and you'll see what I mean. Number 2. Read The Handmaid's Tale as a social commentary of its time. This book was published in 1986, and so Margaret Atwood was obviously spurred on to write this by certain societal catalysts, and so to read this with that in mind, that it was published in the 80s, kind of gives you a different mindset. Besides, we all know things have gotten so much better since then. Oh my god. I do find this point important because when the trailer debuted for the series on YouTube, there were a ton of comments from people that were fans of a certain administration saying that this show would be an attack on the President of the United States. I haven't checked, but I'm assuming the show was in production well before the election, and it'll be interesting to see what points they address within the show and how exactly they go about addressing those, because there is definitely a different mindset in 2017 than there was in 1986. Feminist ideologies have definitely become more mainstream since then. Heck, this book is read in high schools today. And so it'll be curious to see how they address any societal concerns with this 2017 edition, as opposed to how Margaret Atwood chose to address her societal concerns back in 1986. The stories will be very similar, no doubt, but give yourself the opportunity to really analyze this text, not only within the time period of 1986, but within the influence that it's had leading up to the 2017 show. Number 3. Read it to better understand the internal turmoil of Offred. A huge part of this society is that women are essentially silenced, and so we learn a ton from Offred's inner dialogue. They might actually have some of that dialogue in the show, but some of it is so important when she's interacting with another character, when she is able to speak to somebody. And I feel like it would be hard to get her thoughts out on screen like they were in the book. Although I do love adaptations of all kinds, I think that this is a common weakness with a lot of them, is it is really hard to get a lot of those inner dialogues out on screen, and so reading the book can only augment your experience. Number 4. Although I've been really light with the spoilers so far by design, this next part will definitely bring in some parts of the ending, and so if you're sensitive to spoilers at all, I'll catch you next week for the next episode. Read it for the ending. I know this sounds strange, but within The Handmaid's Tale, I kind of think that there's two soft endings per se. There's the end of Offred's story, which I'm curious to see if they'll carry it any farther than it goes in the book, because it does end kind of suddenly without a resolve for her specifically. But I'm also curious to see how they handle the meta ending in the book, if they even include it at all. I thought that this actual ending was super cool because I love metafiction anyway, but I thought that it was such a great addition to a dystopian novel to kind of see what happens after the story. That doesn't always happen. You can think of 1984, you can think of A Brave New World, and they kind of end within that society itself, but this other ending where they analyze the actual Handmaid's Tale, it's an actual story that exists within this story, you get to see that that society didn't last forever, and there had been lessons learned from the Gilead Society as it was. Don't quote me on this, but I think I read somewhere that there was a sequel to The Handmaid's Tale somewhere in the works. Could be fake news for sure, which would be supremely fitting for this story. But I'm curious to see if that ending that's in the book, the true ending, will make it to the show, or if they'll leave it open to the possibility that there will be more story to tell later. Read it. Read the book. Do it. You have a week, read it. I know I was a little light with the content of the book, but like I said, essentially consider this a part 1 of The Handmaid's Tale. I do think that there will be a part 2 later on down the line to get a little bit deeper into the story, especially once I've finished watching the show, and have a little bit of a comparison between the two at that time as well. But essentially I wanted this video to be for anybody that's considering reading the book before watching the show, and pushing you to actually do that. Thanks for checking out the show, and I hope I'll see you again. Under His Eye. Ugh. See you next week.